Yeah, but I got. Good job. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. You taking pictures? Yes, I am. Oh, you'll be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe here and there. But it's like official. In yours. Yeah. And I think that's. So we do have the speaker behind the couch, so we don't have to worry about microphone or anything like that.
Oh,
Yeah, so. We got, I have about 10 questions.
that's
or so.
cool.
And a few questions are kind of specific, and then other questions are very open to anyone that wants to.
Everybody's learning.
Yeah. Yeah. I should have anticipated that. I should have just chairs. Next time. Let me just know when you're ready.
Yeah. Check 1, 2, 3, check. Okay, good to go.
You don't have to wear the lanyards. If you want.
I hope I don't forget I'm leaving.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hannah, and I'm honored to welcome you to today's panel discussion hosted by Nordic Inclusify. I am a talent acquisition consultant here at Seattle Every, and the board member at Nordic Inclusify. Our topic of exploration today is one that lies at the intersection of organizational strategy, diversity, and talent management. The recruitment paradox. Can you hire for diversity and at Nordic Inclusify, we promote diversity and inclusion through recruitment, talent strategy, and employer branding throughout the Nordics. Our mission is to foster inclusive environments where all individuals have the opportunity to thrive and contribute their unique skills and perspectives. If you enjoyed this presentation, we do have a community on LinkedIn and our Slack channel. You can probably find the Slack channel invite in our LinkedIn. The idea for today's event was of my own. I have been working here in Finland for the last 3 years. And in my experience, when the topic of diversity and inclusion initiatives come up, there's always a pretty healthy amount of pushback of some sort, either from employees or from HR or outside stakeholders or online. So I was hoping in today's discussion to really bring to the forefront some of these criticisms and discussion. In today's dynamic and interconnected world, organizations face a crucial question when it comes to their hiring decisions. Should they prioritize talent and competence above all else, or should they actively seek to build diverse and inclusive teams? This event aims to explore if these goals are mutually exclusive, or if there is a way to achieve both. But let us acknowledge that tackling this huge issue is a bit too large to solve in a single evening. It is important to recognize that not all answers may be crystal clear. We encourage our panelists to feel comfortable and transparent, even to say, I don't know, as we collectively navigate the complexities. We will spend the first 45 minutes on the discussion, and at the end, we'll Q&A. If you are viewing this online, I ask that you wait to send in your question until the end, because there is a chance that your question will be asked in the following questions in the discussion. And then please help yourself more coffee, tea, cola, if you would like. And then there are bathrooms close to the front of the entrance. And just a reminder that we are recording and will be uploading on YouTube later too. Joining us today are esteemed panelists, Erica Terranova, Sophia Poles, Benedicta Omokaro, and Daphne Meneses. Each of them brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise in recruitment and diversity. To kick things off for our discussion, I ask that each panelist just take 1 or 2 sentences to describe kind of who you are, introduce yourselves. But I would also like for you to share what your initial thought was when you were asked to participate on this panel. But please, can you give us, our panelists, a nice round of applause and welcome? Thank you. And please, Erica, if you would like to
Yes.
start.
I'm a senior growth professional. I've been in Finland for 12 years, and I work a lot with international talent in my free time. So just supporting international talent, especially when it comes to finding a job in many different ways, especially mentoring and creating this position done, and also speaking events. And I really love to be invited on this topic. I think we always have this discussion, which in Finland is still at the very early stages. But basically, my main thought is let's stop talking only about one type of talent, only one way to the whole problem.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia. I am a founder and a tech talent strategist at a company called Finder Seekers. So we specialize in talent acquisition and employer branding. And yeah, I've been very curious about DEI since I was a child. My mom is a hardcore feminist, and then I've expanded from the diversity of genders to the diversity of many things. And this is a very interesting topic. It is something that I face almost every single day, and I've had a million of those conversations. I'm very happy to be here today.
Hi everyone, I am Benedicta Omakaru. I'm a DevOps engineer. I work with clients and we develop solutions, specifically on e-commerce solutions for our clients. Sorry if my voice is not so loud. I have been going through some code lately. Yeah, so I was very surprised when I got the email from you asking me to discuss on this topic. But it's a pleasure to be here, and I hope we'll have a very interesting discussion.
Hi everyone, my name is Daphne. I'm co-founder and CEO of Hatingo, we're building a platform to help international women find more opportunities in Finland and in Europe. Super excited to be here specifically because before I left my previous job, I was very interested in discovering myself. And when I understood that I represented what DEI meant, I felt like my whole entire life, it was basically acknowledging that I could be able to help other individuals, even when I was 5 years old defending the bully, that wasn't the bully of the classroom. So I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you all very much for being here too. My first question goes to Erica. You were the first multicultural hire for Moving. Can you tell a little bit about that experience, what it was maybe in the beginning when you were hired and how it is now?
Yeah, so let's say that this like being hired as a first foreigner ever in me really changed my perspective on a lot of things because I came from tech environment, which was in theory much more diverse, but then I experienced a lot more discrimination, interestingly, and then instead of moving, I found that even if everybody was Finnish and monocultural, they welcomed me way better. So it kind of forced me to confront the fact that very often just because you have diversity does not mean that you have equality or equity or justice of any kind. So that is one of the things that has been really insightful for me and has made a huge difference in our advocacy. I also firsthand saw this problem that happens a lot in small and medium-sized businesses in Finland, which are the vast majority, over 90%, where recruiting is usually done via personal networks. You don't even publish a job ad, you just pick up the phone and ask your friends if you know somebody. And this is something that I try to push back against and try to encourage for more open recruiting processes. But it's also like a tough conversation to have because for many of these businesses, recruiting is seen as basically extremely tiring and not great process and takes a lot of energy. And it's just so much easier to be counted on. And my counter argument is always, yeah, but then you miss out on the best possible talent that can actually change the trajectory of the company. And I would say that, like, I think people are realizing more and more, and when they're exposed to a positive experience in either international talent, then it's much more likely that they will want to continue doing that and doing that even more in the future. So when I was hired, I also made a point that they were looking for somebody who spoke English and Swedish, and besides having more skills than the other candidates, I was also actually coming from an international background is a strength, because you are an international company. It's not good for you if everybody in the company speaks English. And they were, oh, actually, that makes sense. So I would say it has been, I learned to give a chance also to only Finnish companies, which maybe before I would have been a bit scared. But I think also my colleagues have learned that there is a lot of value in hiring more diverse talent.
And it shouldn't be the last time, right?
No, we already hired another foreigner after me, so
Very good.
I started the drive then.
Really good. Nice to hear. Sophia, you handle some very difficult sourcing cases with clients. Do you address diversity with your recruitments when you talk to clients? What is that kind of conversation typically like?
Well, your typical average hiring manager is like, of course, we're hiring the diversity, but we're always hiring the best talent. And that's kind of like the argument that I hear a lot. But what I've been in the industry for almost 15 years now, and what I've seen in the recruitment space is that it is not actually true. Companies are not really hiring the best talent. They're hiring the most suitable education. They're hiring based on their own prejudices. They're hiring based on their own perception on certain things. So for example, in Finland, I think there's a lot of emphasis on having a Finnish education. So we typically want people who have that Aalto background or whatever that might be. And I've had some great candidates who just don't happen to be called Matti or Mikko, but they have not been considered for the job because the hiring manager or the HR manager have just said like plainly like, oh, this person doesn't speak Finnish. I'm like, did you check their CV? And they're like, no, but their name is like something else. And I'm like, oh well, okay, but if you check their CV, they're actually Finnish. And I think this has been a very big mental shift for a lot of companies and hiring managers and HR managers to realize that not every single person in Finland is called Maija or Mikko anymore. I do think as a consultant, like, you are pushing companies, but at the same time, like, there is a very fine line where you just can't push too much because then they will not hear you out anymore. But I definitely think that, for example, anonymous recruitment is one solution to that. So it's not completely taking away the prejudice and discrimination, but combined with like more education and more awareness on your own biases, it can help hiring managers to make better decisions. Because like you said, we hire a lot through, okay, my last time, I have a lot to talk about it. Anyway, Finland is a very trust-based society. We hire a lot based on our personal connections and someone we know. And once someone has that trust built, like you have at Moomin, then it's so much more easier for people to, for example, hire someone from your networks who doesn't necessarily speak the language. And I think this is one of the most crucial things that, like, very often this is one of the reasons why people who are either like not Finnish by origin or by education, different gender, or belong to any kind of like underrepresented groups, they don't have those connections, and that's why it's very difficult for them to get that introduction in the organization.
Yes, and I was talking to Erica about this before. It's like I was the first English speaker to be hired onto the team. myself and she was also first multicultural hire. There's a certain burden that also comes with that, you know, like, don't mess this up for, you know, the next.
For everyone
Yeah,
else.
everyone else.
Yeah.
You're representing your community kind of in this.
Yeah, and I mean, it's very unfair. It shouldn't be like that.
No, it shouldn't. No. Benedicta, you have the documentary that you came out last November. It was titled "Can Finland Function or Grow Without Immigrants?" It had a large focus on the healthcare workers in Finland. And I was wondering, like, do you think the challenges faced by immigrants in Finland's healthcare sector reflect broader on the issues in recruitment and diversity?
I do think so. To some extent, I do think so. I mean, the healthcare industry in Finland is okay. I'll backtrack a little bit. When a foreign student comes to Finland to study, and he or she is if the major of that student is maybe engineering or in the sciences or even in the social sciences, there is that tendency that after the student graduates, you don't get hired in your core competence. At the end of the day, they have to go back and study to be a nurse because that's the job that's available to them. But even then, when they get into that industry, they don't get to be nurse, like, you know, in the words or in the core center of the industry. They are in the periphery. Life tired, that is the caregivers. They are neglected or pushed into that. So their talents aren't seen just because they are not, as you, to your point, with the last name men or, you know, typical Finnish last name. So I think it's very reflective of what the industries are in Finland. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of immigrants can relate, you know, taking work that might have been less, might be a step down than what you had in your home country.
They had to, you know.
Okay.
A friend of mine 2-3 weeks ago finished her dissertation, and it was almost similar with this same topic. I don't know if, I'm sure some of you must have seen it. Yeah, it dawned on me that this is something that has been going on for a long time and it isn't going to go away. Let's be realistic about it, because the job market in Finland is quite small. The industries are quite a bit more closed compared to other countries like the UK or the US. It's not so open. So in that sense, there are more qualified persons vying for the same jobs. If you go to LinkedIn and you apply for a specific job, you find that 100, 200 persons have applied for the same positions. So in that sense, the recruiter is looking for someone who fits into their bullet points first before the skills. I mean, it's a very challenging scenario.
Thank you. Daphne, your company, Hayningo, supports multicultural women, specifically. And I was wondering, how do you try to convince employers to hire more multicultural? What's your pitch that you give them?
Well, we're usually tackling the fact that they want to actually grow diversity inside the team, that it doesn't have to be that the hiring manager says what the requirements are, that it's actually that the recruiter has to go in and defend why this talent is the best choice. And the fact that we're strictly helping international women in this phase of our company is actually giving them more insight into why a international woman has more capacity, or maybe not more capacity, but enough capacity to also be selected, given an opportunity. And recently we discovered that in Finnish, the word opportunity doesn't really exist, it's possibility. So in the pitch, it's basically, are you capable of giving possibilities, or does that not exist? And that is how we kind of grab them to their attention.
It's very honorable. Thank you. Now I have some questions that are a bit more general, so feel free to jump in if you feel like you have a good response. There can be concerns that prioritizing diversity may compromise the principles of meritocracy, where individuals are evaluated based solely on their abilities and achievements. Employers may worry that focusing on diversity could undermine the perceived fairness of the hiring process. How do you respond to people of these concerns?
Maybe I can start. I find it interesting that whenever there is this discussion and you're like, oh, you could hire more diverse talent, the first question is like, oh, but what if you're not as good? And I'm like, why is that the first thing? Like, who has said that that's supposed to be the case just because we are telling you to hire more diverse? So that is problem number one. Problem number two is like, what are you focusing? Because very often when you look at what actually is needed to succeed in the team, it's very easy for a team or a running manager or the company to focus on some specific things. But then when you dig deeper, you actually find out that, for example, soft skills, ability to communicate, ability to understand, cultural difference, all of these other things, even other languages might be just as beneficial or even more beneficial. So that is also the second problem. Can we really, is it really like that you need 10 years of experience in this specific thing? Or is it more like, oh, maybe like actually a couple of years of experience, but also being able to work with the stakeholders and communicate with with different people would be more beneficial. So that is also another problem. And the third problem is that we have an idea, a default idea of what excellence looks like, and that is a bias. So we think that excellence, we associate it, and we all have our biases, but we associate it with usually all like it's a man, it's like highly educated from certain places in the world, looks a certain way. We know that like everything has an impact, your age, your looks, your weight, your height even. There are studies on that as well. So can we challenge a little bit this idea of what excellence looks, sounds, presents themselves like? Can somebody be totally brilliant but not wanting to look you in the eye? Or can be somebody be incredibly skilled but talk with an accent? Like, it's so much more than just saying, oh, but what if you're not the best? I would challenge and say, the people that you have in your team, are they the best? Are they all the best? Or did you hire them because they look like you and you don't feel threatened by them?
I think it's a very complex topic, and I think we need to address it from like various different levels. So we have kind of like the societal level where we need a lot more representation. We need people coming from like different underrepresented groups and being presented in media, in leadership positions and so on. And then we have the organizational level. And when we talk about the organizational level, we often think that there is some kind of silver bullet that we can just take, like, oh, let's implement diversity hiring in our hiring processes, and then we're all good with it. I mean, I can promise you that it will not increase diverse hires if you just say like, oh, recruiters increase diversity hiring, because we have a lot of like challenges that we need to tackle. And one of them is, for example, that because of our legislation, we can't really collect data on people that we hire. So we can, for example, ask when we have the hiring process, like, oh, are you disabled, or do you belong to any underrepresented groups? Like, we can only collect data that is relevant for the job, and typically there is like you rarely need any kind of like diversity related data to be relevant for the job. And I think that's why it is so important for organizations to rather turn inwards and do the work with themselves, and then start creating pull effects rather than like trying to optimize all processes, because processes will be optimized. That will happen naturally when you do the work with yourself. And so I have a good example. A friend of mine is a recruiter in a German company, or talent acquisition manager. And when Black Lives Matter became a big thing, their leadership was saying like, oh, we need to hire more Black people in our organization. And she was like, it doesn't work that way, that like we're a group of like homogenous like German people, and now we're like, this trend comes and we're like, well, let's hire more Black people. And she's like, what do I go on LinkedIn and like, do I like like you start just by looking at people's pictures and then trying to evaluate like who's black, like who's black enough for you? Like how do you consider this? I think this is a really good example of how companies go into diversity hiring as well, that they pick up these trends and they're like, oh, now we need to hire more disabled people. And it's like, can you ask in the process if the person is disabled so we can get more disabled people? And it's like, it just doesn't work that way. You need to first do the work inside, make sure that you are an inclusive workplace where equity is embraced, where you run diversity training, where you run bias trainings, and then you need to start engaging with the right communities. And I think that is the most important thing for any organization to do, rather than trying to establish certain like recruitment processes that embrace diversity. That will come naturally when we focus on it.
Thank you. That was really elaborate, but
That's awesome.
sure, if we can.
Keep it short.
Yes.
I would say, companies picking up trends isn't doing much good, but it's doing a lot of harm. Because the issue is to try to provide or give more possibilities to a diverse group of persons. But when you pick up trends and it's just to tick boxes, then it makes the whole situation even worse, because the individuals who really need to be reached or should be targeted, they aren't at the end of the day.
I think it actually brings in my next question is, how do we hear about like diversity quotas and stuff like that? Do you feel like quotas are a good idea? Is it something made up by people that are against diversity, or have you had those conversations with it?
I think it's a terrible idea. A very terrible idea. Every business exists to make profits at the end of the day. If you aren't making profits, you won't be able to pay your employees. And if you aren't paying employees, you are leaving people unemployed. It's a cycle. It's an economic cycle. So I think it's a terrible idea to have diversity or inclusion quotas. I mean, make the workplace inclusive. I'm using the same word, but make it easier for everyone to express themselves without feeling like they have to walk on eggshells. That is the first goal. And then make the workplace more open, so that people who come in, employees who come in, are able to function without feeling that they have knives on their backs. If I on YouTube, I saw a video of a diversity coach talking about past works and doing these exercises with employees and exposing what they've had, their past experiences in their personal lives. Bringing it to the workplace might not be a good idea for a particular company. It might work for another, but it might not be conducive for a particular company. So I think having quotas is just a terrible idea.
Going back to the possibilities what you were mentioning, I think it's actually a great point. We're talking about Finland, but I've been researching that in Finland, we don't have that much inclusivity even between Finns. So we are talking that they should be listening more in what's happening inside. And basically we should start with understanding how do we create awareness between Finns to be able to understand what diversity is, because sometimes in my case, I talk a lot about supporting international women specifically, and people say diversity is gender, men and women, or Finns and international, but in reality, diversity can be millions of other things. And if we create awareness, then of course it's going to be easier for Finns teams to be able to accept better diversity and be inclusive.
Now I wanted to say about quotas. I'm very torn with quotas. So I think, like, honestly, for example, I think Norway has had them in use for a longer time, and they've really done some good in the country. But here again, I think we have the same problem. Quotas, like, how do we collect data on quotas? Because if we can't ask if a person is, for example, disabled or what's their age, how can we create quotas? That, I think that is the difficult part, like, because if we don't collect that data, like, we will never be able to set those quotas. Where I think quotas could work if we were to able to collect the data is where if you can put like opt-ins in the recruitment process. So, and then you establish them as part of your process. So for example, you say that for every single position, you need to have say like you have like a recruitment process and you have a hiring manager for every single process. You need to hire you need to interview, for example, 40% of people who belong to underrepresented groups, but then you need to have it as an opt-in in the recruitment process. When they leave their application, they could opt in. I do belong in an underrepresented group, and you don't necessarily, then you can ask also like which underrepresented group it is, but it has to be their choice, the talent's choice to put the answer in. But then we come into another problem, which is that if you think that you belong to an underrepresented group and you opt in for that, are you afraid that you're going to be discriminated because of this? So, you know, it's so like it's such a complex issue that we should really do the bias trainings and look inwards before we start inserting any of these quotas or anything in the processes. But I do agree that quotas is in like, okay, let's hire more international people, like or more, I don't know, more disabled people. Like, how do you do it? Like, because you can't even collect the data. It's just impossible.
I think quotas can be difficult. I can see the pros and cons of that too. It's like when I think about it, it's like when you have a quota, there should be some accountability then to get to that target. If you don't get to that target, what happens then? Some accountability. It's like for sales, if you don't meet your quota and your target, there's consequences. And if you set initiatives in your workplace to hire, 50% women by a certain time, and it doesn't happen, there's nothing. It's just, okay, we'll just change the target, change, whatever. I think it lacks some, not exactly sure what the word is, but it just lacks consequence.
But can I
So,
say
like,
that I'm the only one maybe here, but I'm actually in favor of quotas. But because I think that if we lived in the ideal world, sure, we wouldn't need them. But sometimes in an unjust world, kind of putting some pressure on organizations to change things is the only way to move forward. It's a little bit like Norway implemented the rule to have that they needed to have more gender equality, for example, in company boards, because nothing had ever worked, and that was the only thing that actually made it happen. So yeah, I'm not saying it's a perfect solution. For sure, there are very understandable the downsides, but I also think it is possible. Many countries have implemented quotas, at least for having women represented in parliament. And coming from a country that is struck a lot with this, I can tell you that without like the little that we have, we wouldn't have even less. So I look at the results because it is a matter of representation. Because when you see people in those positions, you yourself also believe that it is possible for you. Because I think a very big problem is that it's not necessarily like, oh, let's interview more women in this position, but it's also a lot of those biases that the hiring managers might have, and then it's also because like a lot of people who are in an underrepresented position, they're struggling so much. Like just imagine that if you've been looking for a job for a long time, like a year, your self-confidence is so low that you're performing already really badly in the interviews. And I think this is one of the key challenges that we have is not even like opening the doors and creating that opportunity, like coming for an interview, but there has to be that equity part as well, where you raise those people up as well, because you do realize that if someone has been unemployed, for example, for a long time, or they've really struggled, it is very difficult for them to perform well. Whereas if you come in from a secure position where you just have your job and you're in a good place and you're just a little bit shopping around like what's out there, of course you're more relaxed. Of course you are like probably performing better. And I think this is one of the core challenges that we have. But to answer your question, or to comment on like how can we actually make it happen? If we set managers targets and their bonuses are tied to those targets, those things will happen. They will always happen. Money is the best like incentive for anything.
Well, we say that, I mean, we know diversity increases revenue, businesses that are diverse, but that's still like not enough apparently.
Because they don't really believe in
Yes.
it. When they
Yes.
start to believe in it, they will implement it.
Very well.
I would say the right form of diversity. because all kinds of diversity might not be right for all kinds of companies. So I would say the right form of diversity is the best. You know, one that helps each employee to move up and one that moves the goals of the companies towards forward. Yeah, so
So, what strategies do you think can be employed to balance diversity goals with maintaining high hiring standards based on merit? What kind of balance can there be in a hiring process?
hmm,
And then first thing I would say that there are ways in which, first of all, you can look at, even if you want to keep the same standard, you can make it so that everybody can perform to their best of their abilities. So we can already start it from that. Are your processes accessible for everybody, regardless of, for example, disability or neurodivergency or like welcoming? These things are very important. If you are coming into a hostile space, you're not gonna perform very well, of course, or like you probably are leading into, or let's say that you really have to fight it anyway. So you could already start it by saying, okay, even if we keep these standards, these exactly very standards that you wanna keep, can we make sure that everybody has the opportunity to perform the best? And this is something that in Finland is not really done. I never seen, but many, very, very few companies ask you like, oh, what would help you? Like, do you need some accommodations? Do you have trouble with like really strong lights? Do you prefer being sent the instruction in advance because I don't know, of whatever reason? Or even things like if you belong, for example, to any kind of you are like transgender or non-binary or anything like this, and you see that like the recruiting team or the people you are interacting with will use pronouns in their emails, or you see that there is a very like she, he, and that's it. Like all of these things do matter. So I would already say you can start from this is like very basic, not so difficult. You can start just by thinking, how can we make even those processes that are just for measuring skills and measure everybody's skills, how can we make them inclusive for diversity?
Yeah, you mentioned that that's a really good way to start. I recently interviewed HR from Wolf. They're doing exactly that, and people that have been on the side of being recruited, they have appreciated, for example, a woman that was pregnant, another woman that had 2 kids could take their assessment back home 1 week compared to having to be there 2 hours. I think that's really helpful. So I agree with what you mentioned. It's really needed to be diverse, not only as a person, but also as so many options they can have.
I think a really good point. It's like, the best talent, may be busy with other things. And it's important to like have, larger windows to get things done, kind of schedule to do things too. So, do you think there's some kind of balance that we can have with diversity and merit recruitment, or any kind of strategy comes to mind?
Yeah, but it's a massive topic, and
Yeah.
I would myself like the easiest thing that any organization can implement is just asking their people. Again, once again, this often like you belong in an underrepresented group. It can be anonymous, and then asking like whether they feel included, whether they feel like there's equity, whether they feel like they're getting supported, whether they thought the hiring process was diverse, and then engaging those people in developing the process as well. Because if we then reach the conclusion that like, okay, we do have diversity, like there is diversity in every single organization, but there is diversity, and the talent doesn't feel included. They feel like there's no equity. For example, we can see that a lot of companies are hiring, for example, international talent quite a lot, but they remain in the lowest position in the organization. They can't really go up. We can still see that we have very few internationals or disabled people in leadership positions. And I think like, if you don't have that in place, like there's no point in doing anything with your recruitment processes. Because like when you have equity and inclusion in the organization, my take is the diversity will sort of start happening, because then it's the conversation is there, we'll start implementing things and so on, and only then you can implement this diversity hiring. Because then when you hire diverse talent, but you don't have inclusion and equity in your organization, that talent will be immediately, they won't stay. But yeah, for the hiring purposes, the best thing is to educate your hiring managers and recruiters on biases, because we all have them. I was very shocked. So I said, like, I'm raised by a feminist mother, and I was very shocked when I did this test, like whether am I biased that women are more suitable for caring jobs and men for engineering jobs, and I had that bias, and I was so shocked because I'm raised by a mom who has basically told me everything is possible. So even I have that bias, and that's why I need to do a lot of work with myself, like just acknowledging it. So yeah, like I think it's because it is in every single one of them, and if you don't become aware, it's very difficult to change it.
I think I took that same unconscious bias.
Yeah.
Test.
It's horrible. Don't do it.
It can be a bit shocking.
Yeah.
Well, we're already at our kind of last question that ask each of you to kind of answer. Based on the insights and experiences shared today, if we could give one practical step people can take back to their organizations that they can take right now to promote diversity and skill hiring within one's IT industry, what would that kind of first practical step be?
I have to say, I agree a lot with what Sophia has been doing, has been saying, that it needs to start with internal work. So if your organization is completely unaware of these topics, first of all, you cannot improvise D&I, and D&I should not be unpaid work done by employees usually belonging to marginalized groups that don't get any recognition and actually might get even penalized for it. So hire a professional, like push your company to work with a professional organization that works on the DI topics and that can actually provide training and surveys and assessment and start this internal work. But I am very critical of things like employee resource groups and things like this, because unfortunately I've seen that very often it's just marginalized people trying to change an organization from within and without any leadership buy-in, and just hitting a rubber wall over and over and over again and even getting punished for it. So it needs to be organization, it needs to be led by the leadership, it needs to be done with professionals. I think.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. And then I think another thing that you can do is that no matter what you're doing in your organization, every single time ask, like, how can we make this more inclusive? How can we take DEI into account? Because it starts with a conversation level. You just like make people think about it. And then, like you do this for 6 months and you can see that they will start asking you like, oh, should we take inclusion into consideration with whatever we do? So it's sometimes it's also just a small action that you do. Like, for example, when I'm looking for partners for our organization, be it like marketing or whatever we buy outside, I'm always asking my partners as well, how do you take DEI into account in your organization? What are you doing to promote it? And this is the way to keep each other accountable, and then really challenging that. So I think it's very important, especially when you're choosing partners, when you're choosing like whatever processes inside the organization, just like gather that DEI. Some companies there who are more diverse as well.
Yeah, I would say define what form of diversity you want to practice and determine what goal you want to reach, and come up with measurable steps so that you actually have data to work with. Otherwise, the terminologies, diversity, inclusion, equity, equality, they seem all abstract and so vague. But actually, sometimes that company might have been practicing it without actually realizing it. So becoming conscious of which aspect of diversity you want to practice and how you want to practice it becomes like the base from which you work with. So do you want to employ people only for their skin color, or do you want to employ people for their talent? Or do you want to employ people because you want to tick boxes and leave them at the mailroom? So determine what kind of diversity you want to practice and make conscious actionable steps to integrate those who come into the company culture, because company culture is a big thing. If you don't have the right company culture that fits in with your goal of diversity, then it's all hogwash and a waste of time.
So I totally agree with actionable steps and culture, especially now that we're creating a startup. That's exactly what everyone tells us. Your culture, it starts from the beginning. If it doesn't, how it's structured now, then it will be hard to just do it all over again. And for me, I think I would have great possibilities. If there's more than one recruiter that I've met here already, great possibility for marginalized, diverse people, anyone that you feel like they might have potential, that giving them a space, an opportunity. I've seen a lot of videos where recruiters say the CV was not the best CV, but I told her or him to just adjust this thing. And the fact that they came into the company, they made it all amazing. So that's creating a possibility. And I would suggest that.
Very nice statement. Thank you, everyone. You could just give a small round of applause. Thank you. We can move on to the Q&A portion. Would anyone have a question? Yes, please. You can stand up. Second, we were discussing. Well, you were discussing that money is a great motivation for businesses and for the decision makers. And when I think of it, I kind of, on the one hand, think, okay, that's it. Yeah, so we know what works. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, but it's not an, again, true diversity, isn't it? If people are motivated just by money, then as like, are they doing it because of their soul, so to say, or are they doing it for profits? Or do you think that if they get the profits, then they will also eventually adjust and become like open to other people? What's your take on that?
I mean, I can answer what I think, which is you have to think that people like, and that is true for everybody. If you have to do something out of the kindness of your heart, it's much more likely you are going to do it for somebody you know and somebody you can empathize with. It's very hard to do it for somebody you don't share anything, like, okay, you don't know them, you don't share history, you don't share a language, you don't share a culture. So we cannot take, the kindness out of your heart as the main guideline, because otherwise you will just do it for people that look like you or feel close to you, and you immediately click and you don't know why. It's because you come from the same kind of culture background, right? So companies are not charities. It's true, obviously, that money is a great incentive. But I think the other thing is, of course, once you do something because, okay, I'm actually I have an incentive to do it, but then you can also start to get the benefits. And the benefits are also like better culture, people that feel more at ease. Actually, you can learn to appreciate the culture of somebody else because, oh, they bring their cultural tradition, or they share their food, or they tell you about their country, which you don't know anything about. This can really lead to much more like a deeper connections and a better atmosphere in a network. But I'm very careful with being like, oh, people should do it because they are nice, because they are gonna be nice to the people they already are nice to. That's just human nature. It's very hard to go out of your way to have somebody that you don't feel a connection with because they are very different from you. And then the people that get punished the most are the people that need the most help, actually. The people that are most at the margins are the people that do not get access to this kind of goodness out of my heart from a hiring manager in the privileged position.
I think that I would add that companies have referral programs because they know that if they can count, if you're talking about trust, because in Finland, they can count that they will bring, and the person that's referring will take some kind of responsibility. So the responsibility is also included in teaching the culture, the programs, whatever the company is structured. So I don't see why incentives would harm, like Eric was saying. I do see it why it wouldn't come from the heart, but again, that would be a great way to bring more diversity. it would also open their minds to say, okay, who would I refer? That I can also take responsibility to teach and so on. So I see both points.
I see a lot of like activities and initiatives like when you just do it because it's good for the planet or good for the people or whatever. They typically are this kind of like volunteering activities that you do, and they remain volunteering as well. But when it becomes your core business and when you do realize that you can make more money out of it, I'm sorry, if we live in a capitalistic world, that's just when things start changing. So it's the same with like all these environmental things. Like first for companies, they were like, oh, let's do something good, and now they realize like, oh my God, we can make money out of this good, and then it really becomes like the change will happen. So I think like when companies are when they finally realize that diversity is bringing bigger profits, everyone will start doing it.
Really good point. So follow up. But then if we talk about, okay, companies now realize that environment, saving environment, but then we have cases like H&M pretend that they care about environment, they do get more money, but actually they're not contributing to the environment, they're still fucking it up. So that's what I'm a bit worried about when I talk about like profits and diversity as the main motivation.
That's exactly my point. Like that's what a lot of companies are doing. They're like, oh, we're diversity hiring. It's so important for us. Like, oh, look at all these like international talent coming in, and then they actually never get any opportunities inside the organization. So they don't truly believe in it. So,
So we're talking about money as a space.
but they are not like, no, I mean, yeah, if you have like internal bonuses for that, but then you don't really have inclusive processes because then you need to motivate people by, okay, how many people can we get on manager level who belong to underrepresented groups? But when the management realizes that, okay, having diversity, every single team that we have in this organization is bringing us more profits, then they actually believe in it. So it's not kind of like the greenwash. So we can say DEI wash as well. Like you hire a lot of interns coming from various different backgrounds, but then like those interns leave in 6 months because you only offer positions for certain people. Or
And the way to do it is like you can tie it to retention. I really don't like the idea of bonuses based on, just getting people in, but like how can you retain that talent? Is that talent growing in the organization? Or are they leaving because they are meeting like discrimination or what or anything? Like always be mindful when people are like, oh, but we have hired, like we've improved so much, we've hired so many of these. I'm like, and I know the organization, and I'm like, yeah, how many of them left? And how many of them were treated horribly? Just say the whole thing. So I think in this group we need to focus on retention and not just on acquisition.
Yeah, I think that you guys know exactly what I'm thinking, but HR has a lot of work to do. And sometimes companies treat HR as if they were just the ones that are hiring and firing, when in reality they should be partners. Specifically, we tend to call startup founder CEO. So strategically, CEOs have to have an HR that they trust because they're the ones who are going to do all that, measuring and tracking who stays, who goes, and why. So that's the key.
yeah, but if you look at a lot of companies, they say like, oh, people are our most important asset. And then you're like, so how big is your talent acquisition, employer branding, and HR budget? Can you do with 200 euros? And then you put like all of that money into like product development. But it really means that people are not your biggest asset.
Thank you. Yeah. Saying the quiet part out loud. Yes. Anyone else? Yes, please. Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm a talent acquisition specialist. So first of all, thank you for all of you. It was interesting. My question is that we're talking a lot about different measures, like educating everyone about the alliance and that. But I think that one of the factors to get the buy-in is the resources. So do you have like some tips and tricks, like what's the key messages to do? Because I feel that many leaders think that, as you mentioned before, that it's a box to tick, and oh yeah, that's very true. Let's go with the big guys, but they don't really know what it means.
and like what it means for them, like maybe people who receive people in the leadership groups and so on. So yeah, so it's what you get, but
Yeah.
Since that's part of my job currently, the way that we can together, for example, if we would work together to make the teams more aware of it, would be being partners of the goal. So yes, we spend more money on the product because we have to make more money to be able to pay our team. So understanding what's the goal and seeing if they're going to sell, I don't know, water. If the goal is to sell water, who strategically do you need and what skills and then as a talent acquisition, come with that knowledge and requirements and be able to say, again, bring the possibility that even though these are options, these are also possibilities to be able to get to the goal of X situation.
I can say, like in my experience, I went the guerrilla approach. I don't necessarily recommend this, but I gathered data and then I embarrassed them. So I was like, so leadership is 99.9% white and women. Do we want to do something about it? Like just do it in public. I'm not recommending that in every situation, but just putting people in front of the fact usually as some power there, because I'm like, okay, this is the situation. Do you think this is acceptable? Do you think this is what you want? And then usually they will be like, yeah, maybe not. And I'm like, okay, then we need to do something about it, right? What are we doing about it? We need to actually start talking about these topics, and we need to do education, and we need to get a partner and all of this. So I think I am nowadays, after having gone through some not great experiences on this, I'm very much a fan of basically using the power of speaking publicly about these things in a way that pushes organizations and leaders to understand that they need to do better. So even something just, even next level, posting on LinkedIn about these topics. In my experience, CEOs or like leadership teams, if you're just talking internally in the Slack channel, it's very easy to dismiss. But if you're talking on LinkedIn about these topics and they see other people reacting to it and people with their Slack reacting to it, then it's like, oh, yeah, right, yeah, we should absolutely do this. That is my, like I say, guerrilla approach.
Now, in addition, usually CEOs have people who they also report to. Maybe they're investors or something. And if you want to get their attention most times, you have to also bring out the monetary value of your suggestion.
Yes.
So how is it improving their bottom line? How is it going to make them get to their goal? If their goal is to hit 10 million or 100 billion in 1 year, how is your suggestion affecting that bottom line? If you are able to bring that first, then you've gotten their attention. If you are not improving their bottom line, which is the money in the bank, you're just whispering. People don't listen.
And a really good strategy is also to show what competitors are doing. Exactly. That's like, I like to also use this fear. So like, you're definitely missing out on something when you see that your competitors are doing
What they've done successfully.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Not how they failed.
Yeah, exactly. But like
what they did successfully.
Yeah. You can take like some success stories of companies like Finnish unicorns or unicorns overall or any kind of competitor and just show. Okay, it's a horrible thing if the competitor is also not doing it, but then you need to come up with another strategy.
But the other strategy could be the generation that's coming after. So for example, I'm Gen Z, so what I approach is generation, I think it's say iPad,
Generation Alpha.
Alpha. So that could also be an approach. I usually say this to one of our clients, and it's very interesting because I don't know all HRs, but some HRs are already thinking, what am I going to do for the next round of talents that are coming? So tackling by then.
We have an outline question. Are the companies willing to implement anonymous recruitment to eliminate biases? What are the current practices in place to adjust prejudice during recruitment? Have you seen anything?
I only know about public sector, and it's in Finland that has done this. I don't know of any private companies, and maybe there are, but like at least I know some public sector, like, blind recruitment processes have happened and they've been quite successful actually. And I think this is a tough sell for a lot of Finnish companies because as I said, over 90% of companies in Finland are small and medium. If you have no recruiting team or maybe one person, very hard that they're gonna be able to do. Like recruiting is very often in Finland kind of a lackadaisical approach, unless you are a big organization and there are many of us.
I was gonna say the same. I have applied for big organization line of putting my name, own skills and profession, and that does happen. It doesn't work, but it's international. And then they see that international corporate that you have worked, they're like, okay, I decided because you have the experience of international background. So it only works that way.
Yeah, I think it's a very tricky, like, it depends what we're doing, like if it's, or what kind of diversity you're trying to attract, because I see the biggest challenge, when we talk about international talent specifically, be it a Finnish person who speaks Finnish and who studied abroad, or be it like a person who is coming from another country and has studied abroad, is that I think you should really remove then the university degree as well in the names of the employers, because it's so easy, like you come in and you're looking for your first job in Finland, or and you like they see the university is like Spanish university, or your experience is from another country. It's the same for me as a recruiter. If I see a CV where the most of the professional experience is from Finland, I can tell like this whether the person will be a good fit or not. But when I see an international CV, it takes me a little bit of time of Googling. So I think it's also a matter of recruiters getting out of their lazy zone and like putting in that extra effort.
So what would an anonymous CV look like? An ideal one?
It would, like, I think the anonymous, I think maybe the challenge and the interesting thing, I'm not yet sure if skills-based hiring, like how can we make it happen? I think it's a beautiful idea, but I'm not sure how it works. But I think like the anonymous CV would be basically where you remove the employers, all of the employers on the university, and you just leave the title and the tasks.
Very manual. I've done that before. When I worked at a university, I went through like 100 CVs and really eliminated exactly that.
But
Like,
it's very
employ-
difficult to read as well.
Yeah, it was
So
very, very
it's
difficult and time consuming to do.
That
it.
means that individual has to have worked or done something very eye-catching to drag attention, because otherwise an average recruiter would look at it and like,
Or
I'm not
then-
wasting my time on this.
Yeah, because I think like the challenge here is that we would have to have the systems. Basically, you get like 100 applications in, and then the system would tell you, and we already have those applications, like the systems, but they only pick up the keywords. And a person might still have the right relevant experience, but doesn't need the keyword.
I would say that actually at every, like in our graduate program, it's myself and a few others that look at the applications, and we're really looking for just bare minimums that you graduated in, the last few years, you don't have any real like career experience yet, and that you are interested in IT. And that's like, and when I look at it, I accept everyone that is under those guidelines. And it's only after the first interview, your managers actually are able to give feedback. And out of this recruitment, we actually have a 50-50 gender balance when at the end, just from that. And that's been true the last 3 years.
And I think also, okay, one tip
Yeah.
here for anyone, if you want to easily improve your recruitment process to be more diversity and inclusion friendly, have a couple of people coming from underrepresented groups in your organization to join the interview panel. And then establish an interview panel where you put all the skills that you're looking for, and everyone individually tracks like how good this person is in this skill, and they do that individual analysis before they talk with each other. I think that's a very easy way to increase diversity in your organization, when you're reducing biases.
And also, can I like if I can mention like the IVE program, like the way that you get recruited in there, you have actually to complete like this online game as whatever. I think that could also be a way, like, okay, we just ask you to do this one thing that takes 2 hours or whatever. I mean, I know it's not perfect either, but that can be another option for certain.
it works when you have a lot of applicants, but it doesn't work when you're doing
Yes.
something.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
There was a question with that, yes, please.
Yeah, hi, Kirsi Korhonen from Startup Refugees today, actually. I was just at the Talent Boost Network Day, which is organized by the public sector, Business Finland and Work in Finland for the ecosystem where we support companies and international talent to find each other. And they have a nice feedback form about the Work in Finland services or the services that they offer to support international recruitment. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on the services that the public sector is now offering and how or whether something could be done to improve them. I can add them to the feedback.
Yeah,
if they're not, but yeah, we talked about what companies can do, but is there something
Oh, yes.
the public sector can do?
At least my main problem with the services given by the public sector is that they, how can I say, the people giving feedback on CV and cover letters, they do not know how private companies work and how to write CV and cover letters that actually work for the private sector. So what happens is we have a lot of places that kind of fill the gap. Of course, the shortcut, local integration, there are a couple. But I've reviewed hundreds of CVs for international job seekers that have gone through, I call the public services, and the CVs are still not, not properly optimized to work for a private company. And that is my biggest issue. The same with university career services. If you don't have people that actually have done any hiring in the last couple of years in a private company, they don't know how the CV and cover letter should be, or even like how important LinkedIn is, or like how to really do well in interviews, like these basic things. The feedback you get is very outdated, and I've seen way too many Europass CVs. So that would be my thinking. Involve the private sector, because it's a huge gap, and so many people fall through the cracks if they don't get into Entry Point or a couple of other programs like this, and they're like, they write to me and they're like, oh, but I applied to 100 jobs. And I'm like, okay, let's check your CV for the letter. It is not the best that it can be. And it's already a tough market, and they already have the disadvantage. And then the CV and cover letter do not help at all.
Go ahead.
I would like to add, because I also believe that feedback is key, and that's what Hayden was trying to support, by giving them actually what is missing. And I recently come across many CVs and cover letters that are ChatGPT copy paste. And I don't know if it's like someone in some place that's saying, oh, you should just do it in ChatGPT and get the best thing. And in reality, it should be a guidance and a personal brand that you are putting on your CV. So if we can avoid having prompts, because I think that's what they're selling nowadays, or and public sector, maybe just saying, oh, that's the easy way. It is very easy, but then we have 50 cover letters that are exactly the same, just changing my name. So I think you would just nail it, involving companies. The key.
I have also one positive. So I think what has been working really well are these government paid internship programs. Because I think honestly, for a lot of people, opening the door to that opportunity is the most important thing. And I've witnessed a lot of people getting jobs through that, because Finland is so much trust based, and once you are in there, you are building that trust and you can show your skills, and then typically if you are a good company, don't want to let you go. So I think it is like it is, because employing, I'm an entrepreneur myself. We are exactly the small company in Finland. Employing a person is very expensive. It's a very big risk, and you just don't want to. You want to play it safe, especially when you are small. But I think when the government is covering for it, even for 4 months or 6 months, someone else is taking the risk for you. And I think that's a really, really great. I've seen a lot of people getting jobs through that.
I would like to add, there is a service from, for example, Vanta. It's Get Work. by Vanta, and they offer this one-on-one coach with their clients. I think it's very useful because if you meet the right coach anyway, if you meet the right one and they're able to tailor your CV to specific job offers, it really helps. And some of the coaches actually go a step further by calling them the employers you are applying to. So I think that is a good part.
I would also like to say something good because that's the energy we want to give, right? And recently, one of my teammates talked to someone from the Misto, and they mentioned how they have so many services and no one knows about it. So if there would be some way to start promoting that more and not just develop advertisements on Facebook and so on, but actually getting the message out there of everything that they have. I think that would be really good.
I would like to add to that. I think there are too many. There are so many programs, and some are duplicating what others are doing. So it feels very bloated. I think there should be a more focused streamlining of the whole recruitment process or recruitment coaching process. But there are so many of them, yeah. And that can be very confusing for people who want to avail themselves of such services.
Overwhelming. You type into Google, you
It's a
know,
lot.
like help, job seeking help. and
Yeah, where do I
Finland.
start?
Yes, it's very overwhelming, the choices that are there. Yeah. Another question, that came from online, kind of goes with what we were talking about a little bit with AI. How do you see maybe AI being used to help, eliminating hiring bias? Is there, I know, different topic, we could spend a day.
No.
Yes.
We are actually building a tool that will get AI assistance, and I think that the question is going more like how it will not if the talent be rejected automatically if the AI is a robot. But in this case, what we're trying to do is helping recruiters understand what are their minimum things to be done and kind of filtering out what best talents could be out there. But at the same time, not only to recruiters on the side of talent, guiding them with what is the recruiter seeing, what are their requirements, because that's a conversation that is lacking between one and the other, that a lot of coaches come in, a lot of public entities are saying, oh, you should do it this way. So if we're actually bridging that gap of what the recruiter is being asked, because they're not defining what is the requirement, and then what the talent has, basically we're giving them the hand with AI assistance to be able to understand what the new market, what the culture is asking for, and everything else that comes in between.
I would say AI is only as good as the source of its data. So if the data is filled with certain biases, it's going to output those biases as well. So
Who's creating AI?
it's creating it. So it is useful. It's going to be a useful tool because I think the AI industry is still very young. There's no limit to what it can do, but there's still a lot to be seen with it. Yeah, it should be used with caution at this point.
And also the biggest problem I usually see with international job seekers in Finland is that they are applying to do many jobs. So my worry is like, oh, now like they do even more of that, and I might not. We have to go the absolute opposite direction, because this approach of like this spamming job ads does not work. So it should be like way like very tailored. You work on one application, really require a lot of time. So my concern is more on the side of my God, now even more of that, which does not work. But I 100% agree with what you're saying, and of course there are ways to support. But the one thing I would say, if you are an international job seeker, please, yeah, do not copy paste from ChatGPT, and also don't use it to try to do applying at scale, because that doesn't work in Finland.
I think what I kind of almost fear is this doomsday scenario is that we're gonna have AI screen applications, and applications are gonna be made by AI. And, you know, interview questions will be generated by AI, and AI is going to
And then you're
give the
interviewing an
responses.
AI.
Yes,
Yeah.
there'll be an AI chatbot on the other side helping answer the questions. Yeah, yeah, that's, I think, that's going to worry, I think I have in the future. You know, any more questions? I think I have to do one more. Well, thank you so much for being here, everyone. Let's please give another round of applause. Very, very delightful, and I'm so happy to have everyone here and really appreciate the conversations and the questions that we had. They're very thought-provoking. Go.
It's not like just question about this thing. I'm not into recruitment, but I came here to get more perspective about the AI initiatives and this thing. But just general feedback. Next time, probably when you conduct something like this, it's good to have a mic or something, or just check it, because you were talking really nice and it was really difficult. I don't know about others, but for me, it was really difficult to understand exactly. So a couple of things I was missing, but you were talking really nice. So
Maybe I should eliminate the background.
Yeah.
Bring people up, but thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we can. Yes, yes. So I will put a few things as we leave here. I will put a feedback QR code up here in just a moment. It'd be really nice to get your feedback about today's event. Second, you guys are welcome to stay, chat, network, have more hula, take one home. Totally fine. When you leave today, there is a spot to drop your badges. It's like a mailbox. And then if you leave, if you go to the front doors, there's like a side door with a green button. You have to hit the green button to open up the door and leave. And anything else? Am I forgetting? Okay, wait, get that QR code in. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
It would be nice to take a photo, but when she comes back.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It's social media material.
I realized that the link is also in this thing.
Yeah, but you know, I've not been posting like really a lot recently, so. But yeah, I know it's changed.
The average used to be like 300 likes, like lately I've been getting 10. Yesterday I posted a picture of my dog. In fact, that's not happening.
Okay, so you need to
Back in the
post
game.
more.
Yeah, do you have to send it to someone, even if it's to your own WhatsApp? The algorithm will try to like interesting. Yeah, they
Oh,
change
but like,
the.
so it's one of the shares you mean?
Yeah, so if you share it to yourself, to your own WhatsApp, then it starts, and then maybe send it to someone else, and then it will just.
Oh my God, I hate that, like.
Oh, we should do like a social media WhatsApp.
Oh, yeah.
Like pause and engagement pause. I'm like, I am not bothered. I'm like, I post when I have something to say, and then I don't post it.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
We have my meeting.
Well done, well done.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Thank you for your talk. Appreciate
Okay.
Take a big picture.
Yourself, or are you announcing ourselves?
No, I.
Yeah, so.
It's interesting.
I would say, I mean, it's very young.
You should have said.
Maybe not like, well,
Stephanie, can we steal you a second?
What do I do with my?